know if y'all recognize me or not, but my classroom is on the 7th grade hallway across from Miss Stevens' room. And I teach students, just like all of us, who have learning differences. Yeah, if you ever see our class or walk by, feel free to say hello. We would love to make friends, as all of us do. So today we have an awesome guest speaker. We're about to start our new book, and one of the themes, as y'all been going over this week, is the main character who has autism. So today we have Ruth Thompson. She's from UNC Teach, and they work specifically with families who have students with autism. So they help provide services and supports, okay? So she's going to kind of go over a little more about autism and then also kind of share with y'all, answer some of your questions, okay? All right, so please show her the utmost respect, as I know y'all will. So thank y'all so much for coming this morning, Miss Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I live autism 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I have a 19-year-old daughter who does have autism, and she's in college. And she went through the public school system, so not only do I work at Teach, but I also utilize the strategies there. Before we get started with what I'm going to talk about, I would like for you all to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that you are in a place where you do not speak the language, you are unfamiliar with the customs of the area, how to say hello, where to go to meet people. There's new foods there, new smells. They use different forms of transportation. There's different sounds that you're hearing. Some of them are painful. Some of them you can hear very clearly. I want you to just think about that for a second. And I am now dropping you in the middle of the capital of this new place that you've never been to before and you have no knowledge of, okay? And the first thing you need to do is figure out how to get to your hotel. So you're looking around and you're seeing people, and you have to ask somebody, how do I get to the Marriott? And you're not quite sure how to do it because you don't speak the language. So you're walking around, you find the Marriott, but then you're hungry, and you go into a restaurant. There's this huge buffet there, but you don't recognize any of the food, or if you do, it's something you don't like, so you don't want to eat it. So you decide, what's the best thing for me to do? I'm going to go up to my hotel room, and I'm going to sit there, and I'm going to order a hamburger, and I'm going to isolate myself until I have to go out the next day. And maybe this will look a little more familiar to me. Maybe I'll have a better understanding of how to get to my meeting that I need to go to tomorrow morning. Okay? How do you think you would feel in that situation? Raise your hand if you think you'd feel anxious, upset, nervous. Excellent. Do you think you'd be looking for a McDonald's? Yeah? Yeah, maybe a Burger King, a Popeyes, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, something, right? Chipotle, Starbucks, right? They don't exist. They don't exist, okay? So now you have to satisfy your hunger with something that doesn't taste good to you and feels kind of funny in your mouth, okay? How do you think you try and communicate with the people that you don't know their language? What would you do? Yeah? Speak up. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You would ask them what to say. I'm having a hard time hearing you. It's probably a great answer, which is why I want to hear. Oh, search it, yes, of course. I've used my technology. Thank you. That was definitely worth the wait. Because those, I like to call them, I have a friend who calls it the magic box, right? The phone that tells you all that stuff. How do I do it? But you may not know how to pronounce these things or use the right grammar, or maybe use a word that has several meanings and you make a funny statement. I put you through this and I ask you to think about that because for a lot of folks with autism, that's what the world is like to them, okay? They don't understand the nuance of language, the eye roll, the come here, the, okay? It's those little types of nonverbal communications that folks with autism don't understand. And so what do? They retreat, they isolate themselves because it's safer. They go back to their hotel room. They look for the familiar and stick with it. They go to McDonald's, right? And they search, usually technology, because they're familiar with it, to find the answers for things. And maybe they find the answer, but sometimes it's a little off. It's not exactly right. The grammar isn't correct. The right words aren't being used. But they're pretty much getting their ideas across. So I want you to think about that when you think about folks in the school here who have autism. They are in your world, which is what we like to call neurotypical. And that's the majority of the way people think and feel and act and interact with their environment. So just kind of think of that person having to walk into middle school every day as if it was a foreign land. So in some ways, autism is not really as different as you. I'm going to go through a lot of these things quickly because I know you guys have had a great education about the specifics of autism, but I want to talk a little bit about this spectrum because I know people are confused, or even professionals get a little confused with it as well. So we have a spectrum here, as you can see, mild autism. So these are the folks who are verbal, they talk, they interact, they don't seem to what we call restricted or repetitive motions, so some of these stereopathies that you see, flapping and finger flicking. And then you have severe autism and social difficulties. These are the folks who really are nonverbal and they can't communicate. They have more of a need for sensory input. I know you learned about sensory input and things of that sort. So remember that line. Okay, now we're going to add to it cognitive skills. That's the skills that you have as an individual in terms of your academic learning, okay? Your ability to learn. And some folks have mild autism and they have average or above average verbal skills, okay? So they're up here in this quadrant, okay? So they don't, what we sometimes say is they pass, you know. Oh, you would never know. People used to come up to me all the time and say, I'd never know your daughter would have autism. No one, really? She's got autism? She doesn't look like she's got autism. There is no look to having autism, okay? You can also have somebody with extremely high IQs but severe autism. And I work with a young man like that. He has an IQ of 145. He is a mathematics major at UNC in the honors program. He is brilliant. He does math that Sheldon Cooper does. And actually his brother, who has autism, is getting his PhD in theoretical physics, which is what Sheldon Cooper has his PhD in. So we're talking about huge IQs, like genius stuff. But this young man that I work with has a lot of autism. His communication skills are very poor. He makes almost no eye contact with anybody. He's unable to regulate his emotions so that he gets very, very upset if he doesn't do something right, if he doesn't follow an example correctly or follow through on something. So you've got people out in the world who can do tremendous things. This fellow is going to do tremendous things in the mathematical world, which I will never understand, but he also has a boatload of autism, as we like to say sometimes. And then, of course, we do have kids who are lower cognitive ability, and they have a lot of autism, but they are interested in socializing with people. They don't know how, but they are trying to. They can learn great skills and be a part of the community. So that all different types of people. So I'm going to mess this up one more time because I'm going to add the third element of autism, which is the restricted and repetitive behaviors. These are the folks up here in that upper right-hand corner, like my daughter. She'll talk about Pokemon for hours. She will tell you about all the Pokemon that you have caught with your phones as you're walking around doing this Pokemon Go thing. She's a living Pokedex. She could go on and on and on about it. She also is very interested in animal care, which is what she's studying in school. And she will go on and on about the differences between different mammals and fish and all kinds, and she remembers every detail, absolutely. But what's her preferred activity, because she has autism? It's rewatching certain television shows that she really likes. So when her downtime comes, she's got to sit and kind of relax herself with this. So she's got some pretty intense, restricted interests, very narrow field of interest, and a very repetitive way of living her life. She likes to know that every day she's going to have a certain amount of time of technology. She wants to know that every year we're going to go to Wet and Wild as a family. This is important. She calls it the tradition. So these are certain things that have to happen, and if they don't, they unnerve her. And as a 19-year-old, she's learned to deal with it, but when she was younger, she couldn't. And that's when she would fall out. She'd melt down anywhere. So you may see that sometimes in the community, people where there's a child who's just having a really, really hard time, and mom and dad are trying the best they can to move on with the day, and they can't. And it could be that child has autism and can't handle whatever change has just occurred. So as you can see, there's lots of things that influence people with regards to their autism. There are different points of all three of these spectrums. Just like all of you have strengths and challenges, people with autism have strengths and challenges. It's the same thing. Who could spend the whole day reading books in their room? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You could spend you're just like, oh my gosh, I have a new book. I'm just going to sit and read. Fabulous. Okay. So now we know our book readers, okay? But let's say someone needs a scorekeeper for a football game and wants to watch the entire playoffs in the week. Thank you, in the weekend, right? And one of the reasons why you love to watch this is because there might even be some mathematics in there, right? With stats and stuff, right? And people's abilities. That's good stuff too. So everybody has interests, and everybody has differences, and everybody has strengths, and we need to remember that people with autism have the same thing. They're just maybe a little bit more focused on their interests, and the challenges that they have may be more difficult for them to handle emotionally. Okay? So let me I have a timer so that we can answer questions. So uneven patterness of development. So one of the things that we often talk about with folks on the spectrum is their difficulty with social and emotional experiences and interactions, and how to regulate emotions and how to interact socially. And traditionally, our kids, generally, for the most part, have difficulty socializing. Now, sometimes it comes out in a way where they just isolate, which is what my daughter does. She will want to see her friends, but someone else is going to have to initiate it. Someone's going to have to call her up and say, hey, do you want to go to South Point tonight? We're going to go hang out, which is what's happening tonight. And she's like, oh yeah, I'd love to go to South Point. That's great. Fabulous. Pick me up at 5. That's good. Now, the flip side of that is some folks have difficulty socializing because they don't understand the nuance of social boundaries. So if I were to come up to this person here and I got really, really close to you and I said, whoops. First I said, I'm sorry because I dropped my little receiver. What's your name?
Justin.
Justin, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
You good? What's your favorite sport?
Football.
Football's your favorite. I like the Buffalo Bills. Sorry.
I like the Panthers.
You like the Panthers?
Yeah.
That's great. I'm really glad. What do you like about the Panthers? I like the Bills because they were really good when I was in college.
Okay.
Okay. What did I do wrong to Justin? Go ahead. I made him very uncomfortable, didn't I? Yeah. And I did brush my teeth this morning, but I did have some coffee, so hopefully my breath wasn't too bad. But how close was I to Justin? Was I too close? Yeah. Yes. Staring into his soul, I was. He's got great eyes. He's got nice eyes. The point is that some people want to be social. Kids with autism want to make friends. If you ask any person with autism, in whatever way he or she is able to communicate, I will tell you that for some reason for whatever reason they are going to want to socialize, but they may not understand personal space. They may not understand when they're being ignored, and they'll kind of keep pushing into the conversation. But wait, Justin. But wait, okay? They may follow somebody around. They want to be included. That's all they want. They want to learn these things. So it's really important to remember that if you see somebody, anybody, autism or not, lots of people don't have social etiquette these days. And so anybody could do this to poor Justin in the hallway. So, but Justin, what would you say to me if I got really close? What would you say to get me to go away?
Can you go away, please?
Can I go away, please? How about, could you take a step back? Hold on, personal space. Right? We do a lot of visual things with kids with autism. Visual. Okay, so personal space. Hey, I didn't know you were into football too. I love the Panthers. Okay, the Bills are out of favor, but that's okay. You can have a conversation about it. Okay? So there's lots of things that. No. I have questions ready. Excellent. 8:10 is when you're done. Okay, so what I'd really like to do is answer questions, because I can go on and on about the differences, but one thing I really want to just end on before I take your questions is that, as you can see in this classroom, diversity goes beyond what we see or who we are, but it includes people who are different from us in the way we see the world, the way we interact with the world, and the way we problem solve, and everybody has value. So if you would just humor me for just a second. Okay. These are the things I want you to remember about interacting with all of your peers. All of your peers. Everybody has strengths and challenges in different areas, therefore everyone has something to contribute, okay? Never bully anybody. And I take that very seriously because all of my children have been bullied in school. And I'll tell you, it is anger-producing for a mom and hurtful to another person in your class, in your school. Please Never bully, intimidate, or embarrass. Embarrassment is probably one of the worst things you can do to somebody. It is a terrible feeling, and there's no reason for it because one day those tables are going to be turned. And if you see any bullying going on, please speak to an adult. If you are being bullied or you see someone being bullied. And I talk about this with regards to autism because kids with autism are often bullied and targeted because they speak differently, because they have different interests. Well, remember, we all have different interests. We all speak differently sometimes. Everyone deserves respect, understanding, and kindness. And remember, different is just different. It's not better and it's not worse, it's just different. So one person may be tall and thin with long blonde hair, and one person may be short with short curly hair, and they're both beautiful people. They're both beautiful people, right? There's no standard for it. And if you make new friends, if you challenge yourself to go out of your comfort zone and interact with people who you haven't interacted with before, whether they're on the spectrum or not, it will help you as an individual. It helps you learn and it helps you grow, okay? And you can do these things in a variety of ways. So I'd like to take your questions now because, as I said, I could go on.
So we have some that are online, so we will online. Okay. So one of the questions is, how does it change with age?
Excellent question, because autism is a lifelong disability, and it's not even a disability, it's really a different way of viewing the world. It's a different way of interacting with information, but it is lifelong. It doesn't change in terms of a diagnosis, but what people do is learn strategies and coping mechanisms so that they can better interact in your neurotypical world. So some people say their autism is getting better, and in actuality, the person with autism is learning strategies as to how to better interact with the world around them.
How do you figure out if a person has autism?
You can't tell. I used to do a presentation for younger kids, and I'd put my kids up, all three of my kids up there, and I'd ask the students to pick which person had autism. You can't tell. How you diagnose them is very different. It must be done by a clinical psychologist. It must be done using two types of diagnostic tools. One is called the ADOS, and the other one is called the CARS. And I won't bore you with the details, but those are the gold standards for diagnosing. And a person can be diagnosed at any point in his or her life. At our clinic, we have diagnosed people in their 70s. They went their whole lives not knowing they had autism. Yeah.
Do you have any specific stories or challenges or highlights of raising a child with autism?
I love to tell the cocktail party story. So my daughter was about 13 years old, and we were visiting my husband's parents, and my mother-in-law liked to have cocktails at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She was very old school, and so she said to me, "Get the girls all dressed up and come over, and we're going to have cocktails." And my twins, who are younger, who don't have autism, they kind of picked up on what it was. They were going to have a Shirley Temple and eat some potato chips. But my oldest daughter didn't know what was going on and was very angry, extremely angry. Why do we want to sit here? We're going to have dinner later. Why do we have to go for cocktail hour? And she was sitting in a chair and she was slumped, really bored and just kind of huffing. And you know what you guys do when you get all annoyed about something. She's not happy. She's really annoyed at this point. And it dawned on me, she had no idea what cocktail hour was. This was foreign to her. What does cocktail hour mean? So I took her into the kitchen and I wrote out a little story. I said, cocktail hour is when people get together, have a drink, glass of soda, some chips, and answer questions and talk about things. And when all of the adults have asked you one question, and you've answered one question from each person, your cocktail hour is over, and you can go back to your room. And she came back into the living room, had a completely different personality. She sat down, she crossed her legs, she drank her soda nicely, she ate one chip at a time, she looked at people, she answered their questions, complete transformation. So to me, that's my favorite story, is my cocktail story. You like that one? Excellent. That goes back to what we call the etiology or the causes of autism. We really don't know what causes autism. We do know that if you have autism, you do have a higher chance of having a child with autism, but it's not definitive. You're not absolutely going to have a child with autism. Similarly, if I have an oldest child with autism. My twins who are younger, they don't have autism at all. But there is a higher rate, a higher risk of me having children with autism because I've already had one. So is it passed down in families? Some people say there are genes, and doctors and researchers are looking at genes that they see are connected with the characteristics of autism. But it's not just one gene, it's a cluster of them, and they all do different things. So we really don't know the answers definitively of that. Anybody have a question here?
One question, does there seem to be more girls or boys who have autism?
Okay, so it does tend to be that more males are diagnosed with autism, statistically. But I have to say, in the clinic, we're seeing more and more girls, and what they're finding is that girls present their characteristics of autism differently than boys do. And so the diagnosticians are trying to make sure that they understand that some of the things that they're seeing in girls do have them meet criteria for autism. It's usually 1 to 4 ratio, 4 boys to 1 girl.
And then this last one, do people with autism like what we like?
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. Who walks around catching Pokemon? Come on. Okay. I can assure you, okay, this is my daughter's biggest thing. If you ever have questions about Pokemon, what they do, what region they come from, who they fight, who they can beat, yes, people with autism have the same interests as you. They go to the movies, they like music, they eat pizza. Some eat gluten-free, some don't, okay? They are just like everyone else. They just interact with the world differently. That's it. That's the only difference. And remember, different is not good or bad. It's just different.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thompson.
My pleasure.